Who could have imagined that in 2021, almost a quarter century after her death, after The Queen and The Crown and the Naomi Watts, you know what? Actually, we don't talk about that movie. After a musical and a TV movie and novels and a play, after the untold number of documentaries and exposés written about Diana Spencer, after all of these pieces of media that try to reclaim Diana and reshape her image and persona the way the filmmaker or documentarian or biographer sees fit, it perhaps seemed impossible that we would ever get a Diana story that didn't presume to know her, but instead took her authentic personality and the horrible circumstance of her life and shaped a story around Diana rather than shaping Diana around a story. And just when it seemed like such a film could never come to fruition, Pablo Larrain and Kristen Stewart would come out and give us an entirely new take on the mythos of Princess Diana. Spencer is a masterpiece. This fable from a true tragedy, as the opening text accurately conveys, is not just some paint-by-numbers retelling of Diana's tumultuous relationship with Charles and the royal family, nor is it some exploitative melodrama about her final days. Some of the former is interwoven into the story, yes, but it doesn't dominate the entire film. Instead, as Diana forces herself through a royal Christmas weekend in the early 90s, Larrain gives us the first true cinematic look into her psyche, the first depiction of the whole woman in this space, the loving mother and the manipulated princess. We finally have a narrative that humanizes Diana to the fullest on the page and then drives it home in execution thanks to Kristen Stewart's unbelievable performance that is sure to rake in all of the awards, and deservedly so. I'd go as far as to say it's her best performance to date. Right from the opening moments, Larrain establishes an immersive feeling of tension and unease. Rather than immediately establishing Diana, he establishes Sandringham House, the place where Diana will spend most of this story. More importantly, it is established for what it will be to Diana. Not a glorious royal residence of comfort and extravagance, but a lifeless prison. Fittingly, the first human beings we see are the royal guards, soldiers who arrive hours before the royals and military-proof the entire residence. A lifeless pheasant lay in the middle of the road, passed over by a convoy of trucks. As Larrain holds on the somber, morbid image, you fear that the poor creature will be mutilated under each passing pair of tires, but it's avoided by mere inches over and over again. Pheasants will prove to be a recurring symbol over the course of this story. Diana, like this bird in the road, like the ones the royals enjoy hunting for sport, has been beaten down for a decade by these people, and even after all of her concessions and capitulations, they haven't eased off. If her individuality were a species of game bird, the royal family would hunt it into extinction for their own pleasure. These are ideas that Larrain and screenwriter Stephen Knight bring to the surface before we even see Diana. But then, when we do finally meet up with her, oh boy. From that first moment we see her behind the wheel of a Porsche, finding her own way to Sandringham, Kristen Stewart vanishes and Diana Spencer arrives, lighting up the screen. As she stops by a countryside restaurant to ask for directions, we know that she is lost. We know that she thinks of herself as one of the people's princess, of course, and is uncomfortable being riddled with attention. We even get the sense that she would really rather not be doing this at all. There's not an ounce of pretense surrounding her. And that idea of not only being physically lost, but mentally as well, will prove to be an idea that the filmmakers go back to throughout the course of this film, and is the first instance of beautiful double entendres interwoven throughout the course of this narrative. As Diana finally figures out where it is she's going, Johnny Greenwood's magnificent score sets the scene so well, unsettling dissonance, the likes of his Radiohead compositions, giving dreamlike piano melodies a sinister undertone. As Diana advances closer to Sandringham, she paradoxically feels like she's gotten further lost. The words "keep noise to a minimum, they can hear you" on a sign don't help to settle the mood whatsoever. It is fortunate that, as Diana pulls over to collect herself, she runs into the royal chef, played magnificently by the one and only Sean Harris, by the way, who seems to have gone out looking for her. Diana is late. How can you get lost in a place you grew up in, Diana laments, before her attention is taken by a scarecrow in the distance, one which guards a nearby abandoned house. Her father's old, patchy, elements-worn coat is adorning the grotesque statue. She rescues it, as if to rescue it from the vicinity of Sandringham entirely. This moment is obviously echoed at the end of the film when Diana rescues herself and her sons from the estate and the events of the weekend, but the coat itself builds up to that ending over the course of the movie. Diana first has the jacket cleaned and repaired, and for a while it fades back into the background. But then Diana goes on to gradually embrace the coat, putting it on and wearing it over the course of the film. After all, this jacket is a link to her childhood, a childhood that cannot be salvaged, but it doesn't mean that Diana's joy is lost forever. Of course, jacket aside, the chef questions why Diana would drive herself to the estate. Everything is curated with the royal family. Everything must be precisely as arranged. This is why the troops secure the house like clockwork, why the chefs are brought in militaristically, why literally everything in the kitchen sink arrives with them, why the rest of the royal family arrive like they are a legion caravan from ancient Rome. The Christmas weekend is almost robotically arranged, and Diana upsets that by being or doing anything but, by deviating in even the most minute way. And so when Diana finally arrives at Sandringham, when we finally get that glorious title card and the bow of tension finally breaks after 20 minutes, no time is wasted in scolding her for being late for sandwiches, in trying to put her in her place and nip her rebelliousness in the bud, beginning with the equerry's insistence that Diana be weighed on the royal scale, or whatever pretentious name they have for it, complete with an appeal to authority that the queen herself didn't consider the scale below her, and so neither shall Diana. There's barely time to challenge the notion that it is proper to put 3 pounds on over the weekend, how gross that is in general, and how extra gross it is when such a remark is directed at someone with an eating disorder. Before we see William and Harry for the first time, practically suffocating in jackets because the heat will not be turned on. Instead of just turning up the heat, the royal family conjures up a literal blanket solution for children. Nonetheless, the way that Diana's first impulse is to spend time with her children and ensure that they are warm, sandwiches be damned, allows the film to quickly establish one of its most important messages. Diana was an incredible mother above all else. Her children became her life, and there is certainly no shortage of heartwarming interactions between them here to support that statement. Whether it is the earnestness and youthful joy of their opening one present each on Christmas Eve, or the way Diana rescues her sons from partaking in a pheasant hunt to instead spend Boxing Day in London, there is arguably nothing that humanizes Diana more than these scenes. There is no other moment in the film where it feels like Diana is more able to be herself, and all 3 actors sell this beautifully. But where those portions of the film are heartwarming, any moment where Diana must be in the same room as Charles comes off as infuriating. Not because these moments are bad, they're actually some of the most layered dialogue exchanges out of the entire film. And the way that they're framed and the use of a pool table is all so riveting. Jack Farthing is brilliantly hateable and pathetic as Prince Charles, accurately portraying his voice and physicality, but also presenting himself as the closest thing the film has to a villain. And he kind of just is one. He philandered around with Camilla. He dismisses every one of Diana's concerns and problems. He insists that Diana capitulate to all of the royal traditions, no matter how unpleasant or even violating they are. And he even overrides his son's wishes to not shoot pheasants by all but putting the gun in their hands. There's a magnificent dichotomy here of family versus duty, with one parent placing family far above all else, and the other placing duty above all else. Larrain could have been neutral about this, as it seems like every single other piece of Diana-related material is, but instead, he refreshingly, very clearly takes a side. If you're going to throw your spouse to the wind, and especially if you're going to subject children to the same, all in the name of what is expected of you, then you are spineless at best and, well, kind of an asshole at worst. But then, this is where Kristen Stewart really excels as Diana, is where the failings of everyone around and above her come to a head, such as in that masterful dinner table sequence, an anxiety-fueled horror show where all of these snobby, stiff upper lips are silently judging and even condemning her, these people who want nothing to do with her. She wears this gorgeous dress with an even more stunning necklace of pearls given to her by Charles, a necklace he also gifted Camilla. The judgment around the table, the sideways glances, the fact that all of these people barely recognize Diana as a person begins to strangle her, begins to turn the pearls into a noose, and Diana reacts by ripping them off, sending them flying in every which way, including into her soup. And yet, Diana still eats pearls and soup all at once because it's not enough to shed herself of this collar. She must personally ensure its destruction. She not only does this in front of Charles, in front of the servants, in front of each of the family members, she does it in front of Queen Elizabeth herself. Does it, in fact, while staring the Queen down, which is something that Charles would never find the courage to do. And of course, the movie reveals that this was all a fantasy as we cut back to her away from the table, still wearing a fully intact pearl necklace. The movie presented us with Diana's first true victory over the terror of being all but trapped inside this manor with these people, and then just as quickly took it away. So much of this film, but that scene in particular, feels as though it was ripped right out of a Stephen King novel, The Shining, namely, and beautifully integrated into this film. Again, this isn't just your average biopic of Princess Diana. No, this is a horror-infused fairy tale featuring Princess Diana. Strikingly throughout this scene, hell, throughout a vast majority of the entire film, the camera almost never leaves Stewart, emphasizing her isolation from the royal family and her claustrophobia and anxieties simultaneously. Sure, there will occasionally be a cut to something else or Diana's POV if it's what the story needs, but Larrain very much finds a way to tell this story and capture this person without the extraneous. By having the camera fixated on Diana, it serves to further isolate her from everyone surrounding her, save for the ones truly closest to her. Diana always feels like she's under a microscope. She even has a conversation with the equerry when she sneaks to the kitchen for late night snacking, of how her windows are open, how guards saw her change, how the press could have as well. And even when she isn't in universe, she is still under our microscope as an audience. Even for those of us who are on Diana's side, which should be all of us, it feels a little perverse. Nonetheless, at least we aren't as twisted or perverse as the royal family and their machinations. Diana is little more than a 10-pound note to them, thoughtlessly exchanged and passed around and used as a piece of bargaining power, even flashed around when necessary. Whatever purpose the royals feel Diana best serves in the moment, they will try and exploit her for. Queen Elizabeth literally says this to her, that Diana is like currency, that all of the royals are to some extent, but especially Diana, used to win over the goodwill of the people. Currency is persuasive, and the royal family have used the power of persuasion to maintain their power and status. Spencer deeply condemns this ethos, giving a scathing indictment of the royal family in the process, and, most fittingly, using the words of the Queen herself in order to do so. Pop culture has really never before dared to stare the monarchy in the face this way, to get up close and declare, "Damn you, you exploitative monsters and your damn machine." Once more, if there was anyone coming into this film who wasn't on Diana's side, who at least didn't feel any overwhelming sympathy towards her, who was still endeared to the royals and their schemes, I don't know how you could watch this scene and not at least have the needle move. However, the context added by this scene, by the idea of Diana being mere currency to the royal family, also gives us further insight into Diana, to be able to see through the looking glass into her private thoughts and feelings, to see her hallucinate the presence of Anne Boleyn, who quite literally outlived her usefulness to a previous monarch, who was killed so that the king could be with another woman. It honestly feels like Charles would similarly go on to rush to Camilla after Diana's tragic death, and confide in her with her eyes alone. To see her interact with Sally Hawkins' Maggie, the joy that their friendship brings to Diana, to see the heartbreak that comes when Maggie seems to have left, and the pure elation when Maggie returns. Actually, speaking of Maggie, Kristen Stewart absolutely deserves an Oscar for this, but you know what? Sally Hawkins does as well. That scene on the beach is a double dose of heartbreak, but also an infinitely powerful moment between Diana and the one person, outside of her children, who has understood her during this past decade, who has made her life easier at all. Maggie is a reminder of companionship for Diana, a reflection of her youth and the warm embrace it gave her, one that was locked away by royal tradition instead. Except that no longer would it be, for Diana rushes to the old house she used to grow up in, summons up her courage to move forward with her independence, and finally destroys those damn toxic pearls for real. Diana will no longer be currency to these people. The pheasant has escaped the hunt along with her children, and while the real-life record might make it clear what happened to Diana's marriage and in her life after that fateful Christmas weekend, after the credits roll on Spencer, the movie at least makes a powerful case that Diana lived the remainder of her years her way and refused to be apologetic about it. Diana was never just her name, and certainly not just her title. Even her affectionate nickname, the People's Princess, reaffirmed that she was her own woman, her own one-of-a-kind being, and that she had as much right to her own individuality than any one of the people in the faux title. Spencer is an absolutely loving tribute to this iconic figure. It's a technical marvel, brilliantly using Sandringham and even London itself. It is written and directed with absolute care and love and expertise. The cinematography from Claire Maton is another period piece home run. And Johnny Greenwood deserves another mention for blending classical overtones with modern 90s arrangements and sensibilities and letting a dark undercurrent run through his compositions. Spencer is an intimate, claustrophobic horror show, but one that has a silver lining of warmth and empathy. Never before has it felt like we've truly seen Diana for who she really is, for the radiant bright spot that was taken from this world far too soon. She was genuinely one of us. And because this film does such an excellent job of showcasing this, so many people are going to again be able to relate to Diana Spencer. I'll say it again, Spencer is a masterpiece, easily one of the best films, if not the best film of 2021 so far. Yep, you heard it here. No Time to Die finally has some serious competition, though it hasn't quite eclipsed that film for me yet, and is the Princess Diana film that we all deserved, but never seemed to get until Pablo Larrain stepped in and decided we'd waited long enough for it. Spencer might be a fable from a true tragedy, but it is also a celebration of an iconic and brilliant woman.